Let's talk about talk. Let's go deep. We all have something to share. No share with Dr. Dave.
And if you see me sitting up sometime, I slouch sometimes.
All right, so Dave is starting off today with confessions about slouching. Welcome to our Impossible Live. And that reminds me, let's all check in. Let's do the stretch. Let's make
Oh,
sure we have something to hydrate. Anyway, behind the scenes, Dave has the most incredible energy. And I want to thank you and welcome you all to Impossible Live. And Dave, thanks for joining us. And welcome back if you're joining us, if you're returning to join us, and thank you for resharing our event, for inviting others to lean in and join us, and just for the privilege of your company today. One of the things we love to do to start and kick off with is by letting you know how we picked today's topic. I had fun last week though, of mixing it up, but talking with Dave, there's so many different topics we could have picked today. We agree that trust is really important, and we look at it from opposite angles. And we agree that integrity is important, and I think Dave may call that fidelity, while I call it integrity.
that's right.
And we agree leadership is critical and building those skills and talents that we need. And Dave has a formula behind the word gap. So, without further ado, let's let Dave, let's tell us more about your gems, and anybody who's joining us, let us know where you're joining from and what's one thing we can help you with in between our possible lives.
So I'm joining you from Tucson, Arizona. I am Dr. Dave A. Cornelius, and affectionately called Dr. Dave. I'm an executive and organizational coach, learning facilitator. I do a lot of lean agile certification training. A lot of my partnerships is with leaders and their teams, for-profit, startup, nonprofit organization, just helping them to deliver their level of awesomeness that meets their goals. One of my great passion is being a community contributor. So I've also founded a meetup and a conference called Agile for Humanity that really supports the BIPOC community, because it's just creating a space where people could have a voice in the product and technology space. I've also founded the 5 Saturdays, and that's the number 5 Saturdays. It's a STEM program that empowers underestimated high school students to pursue knowledge and careers in the STEM field. I was really lucky to have received a letter of acknowledgement from our 44th president, President Barack Obama, for the STEM work. I stay busy, so I've written about 9 books that's available on Amazon.com. I also have several articles that's published on Forbes.com. And I'm a podcaster. I love podcasting. So I have a podcast called Now Share with Dr. Dave, and you could find that in Spotify, Audible, Apple, Google, and many other places. And important thing is that I'm a husband and I'm a dad, and I have a 8-year-old grandson called Aiden. Um, his name is Aiden. Yeah. So, I mean, what people could help me with, I said, cheer me on, send me great positive vibes, because I like to live in that space of gratitude, where I'm always thankful for every opportunity that comes my way and every person that comes into my life that contributes in whatever way they do. So, that's where I stand in terms of, so what is one thing? Send me some positive vibes, send great wishes, and so that's what I look forward to, is positive energy. How's that?
That was so amazing that I'm having fun looking at some of the hearts and flowers that you can't see, and the celebratory stuff, Dave. So thank
Yay.
you so much. And while Dave is screenshotted, he's got a cool QR code behind him at the moment. When you have a chance, zoom in and check out some of his goodies, and send him some more great vibes that way. But I really love what you said about the focus on family. And I have a question, and it's maybe off topic today.
That's all
And
right.
Dave and I had a pleasure also of meeting in Bryn Tillman's amazing social sales link community. Dave, you mentioned lean agile. Can you define that for some of us who might not have had the opportunity yet?
So lean agile is I want to frame it in ways of working, the way we work, the way and is one context. The other context is the mindset. So when we think about, when I say lean agile, practices, we're trying to do things together. We're trying to do things which would what I call shorter feedback loops. So instead of planning for a whole year, how about if we plan um, 2 weeks, every 2 weeks for a whole year, right? And that comes out to what, about 26 different opportunities, right? To really inspect and adapt and change wherever we're going. So that's what lean agile is. And the whole lean thing was started in the United States, exported to Japan and Toyota. If anyone heard of the Toyota production system, lean was made really popular there, and then re-imported back into the United States after it was started here in the US. And the agile stuff is really, it speaks to flexibility, right, and our ability to inspect and adapt when we're doing work. So one thing that I play with a lot, even in my own life, is that my life, even though I may have a vision, I have every 2 weeks, I have an increment of value that I have to deliver. Sometimes I get as small as 1 week. Sometimes I get as small as 3 days. So I make these small feedback loops so I can start seeing progress in my life, because it sucks sitting there for a whole year or longer waiting for something to get done when you could see 3 days or 1 week or 2 weeks. It really changed your mindset and it gives you opportunity to be flexible in the journey. So that's what I teach and I coach, and I do a lot of that work in, for really large companies in the United States and beyond.
That's cool. I really love the flexibility aspect and also the smaller increments. I'm a fan of feed forward rather
Hmm.
than feedback, so that we keep maybe focusing our lens kind of in that future zone or lane. One of the things also that I really love about that is that it's acknowledging the need to keep looking at something in small increments, for because maybe your focus changes, maybe your attention changes, maybe your team changes, or your goals or your budget or your perception changes, and it really, I think it offers some great opportunities to really lean in and cheer on the wins or the ahas in maybe in shorter increments, because we could all say we all really need that, and especially in our leadership or our life journeys.
Hey,
And
I just want to say that's why we like all those little clicks that says likes and emojis of hearts, right? It's short feedbacks for us. So sorry for interrupting.
no, you're not interrupting at all. And you're reminding me, I have to reach out to Richard Lopez. Richard had a great blog on emojis, and we had done a live on emojis. And you're reminding me, I need to reach out to Richard. Hey, Richard, if you're listening, I'm heading your way. And I want to thank you for reminding me of that. So I'll definitely make the note so it'll end up on the done list shortly, which is fabulous. What I
That's
love
right.
to, I'm sorry.
I said that's right. Get on the done list. Getting things done is beautiful.
I have a tendency to do it with notes. There's always a pen nearby, whether I look like I'm writing or not. It's the teacher's kid. And as I laugh, Richard's name is now on a piece of paper with a box around it. So if there's a word and there's a symbol next to it, it activates some sort of action plan. I'd love Dave to dive into trust a little bit. And I know we've got different backgrounds on this, different ways we approach this, and especially whether we're approaching it personally or you're approaching it professionally. But what is trust to you? Can we start there and start slower?
For sure, for sure. One thing is like, I've done lots of research and read lots of stuff about trust. And in my definition, to me, trust has three parts. And the first part, it speaks to empathy, right? That's the very first part. Can I really have empathy for the other person? Because as that person is depending on me to get something done or to provide some value, then I should have some empathy. The second part of trust that I look at is its capability. Do I have the capability to actually do what people are asking? And it could be anything, right? Do I have the capability to bring someone lunch or dinner or build some digital product software? Do I have that capability, right? And the last part of it is that, can I meet the commitment, right? Because oftentimes trust has a big ask. Can I meet the commitment? So I have three parts, right? So we look at the very simple part. They're like, hey, do I have empathy for that individual? Do I have the capability, right? And then, can I meet the commitment? And many people have defined trust in many different ways. But recently, right? I mean, I was playing around, um, I started talking about trust fidelity, right? Trust fidelity, and really what we're talking about is right the degree to which someone acts consistently with our expectations and demonstrate trustworthiness. So trust fidelity, right? Because we have varying degrees of trust. There's some people I would hand over my bank account with, and there's some people I just won't even consider that. So those are the varying degrees of trust fidelity when we're talking about the way we the amount of trust that we could give them. How does that sound to you?
That's kind of an interesting approach. I definitely agree with you in the sense of the two-way street of it. So Yvette Bethel, who helped me get certified in trust styles
Mhm.
and in as a trusted leader, really helped me understand and explore the different levels of trust. The reminder that it's uh, it's almost like a multi-lane highway or intersection. So that there's a lot of factors, and I love what you're saying because you're reminding me that observation is a big part of it because sometimes those observations are shared. Otherwise, in environments where maybe people aren't feeling as safe or comfortable to express themselves, or they're in some sort of challenging culture, or they don't necessarily trust the leader of the
Yeah,
team, they don't really express those. I think that's why the integrity piece of how Yvette really helped me break down the pillars reminds me of the importance of that it's not just how others see us, but it's really how we see ourselves. Because
sure.
otherwise, we need to locate the energy to be willing to create a trust opportunity. We need to be willing to have a relationship with someone or a degree of involvement. So I love your resilience part of it, kind of the can I make the commitment? I really enjoy that question from a sense of kind of tuning into your core because sometimes in a work or life situation, we don't have a chance to really ask that before someone asks something of us. So I really love what you're saying there.
Yeah, and so there's I just did a poll. I just to share with that. I just did a poll to talk about trust fidelity, and got about 50 people who responded back on LinkedIn. So I want to say thank you to those individuals, and thank you because I know you were probably one of the respondents for this. But when I think of trust fidelity and the way we framed it out, it wasn't just my idea. It also some of the wording came from the group that you talked about with Bryn's group. It's like the highest level is that absolutely high trust, and I even added to that always, because I just trust that team always, or those individuals, high trust. And then we have trust but verify, which is medium trust. And the third is which if I look at it in a pyramid at the bottom, I wish I could, which is low trust. So what happens on each one of those different layers, right? In high trust, individuals and teams under that view are unencumbered by the weight of having autonomy. They have autonomy to go and get things done. You don't have to go tell them to do it. They meet that commitment. They have that empathy. They have the capability. With trust but verify, now what's happening is that we're verifying, certain things that those individuals do, and it could be nothing more than a simple thing like those individuals provide some level of metric that we could measure the value that they're providing, right? And so we're just looking at, hey, can we just be steady? And in terms of what value you bring to the table, medium trust. And then I wish I could is what we call low trust, and I just pulled this out and I wrote this, that trust flickers like a dying ember, struggling to ignite the warmth of confidence, right? At that very bottom. I wish I could. And so those are the three levels that we, ran that poll. And it's interesting that the outcome that came back is that 17% said absolutely always high trust. 78% also said trust but verify, medium trust. And then we had 2% that says I wish I could, which is low trust. And so you could see that most people are in the trust but verify space, of who participated in that poll. But you can see it's layers of trust. That's the fidelity that we're talking about.
Are you measuring it professionally, personally,
yes,
or both?
All of the above. All of the above, because the individuals weren't just my corporate partners. There were also individuals who were not corporate partners. And so I would, if I ran another experiment, whether it's a different group of people, the results may be different, but based on this poll, this is what the results was.
Well, thanks for sharing it through the lens of consistency, because sometimes I think in the process of going through a trust journey, one of the things that I was able to discover in working on 2 certification projects was that it's not always consistent.
Yeah.
Like one of the things in the way Yvette Bethel of Organizational Soul helped me think about it was in terms of, if you're, depending on our generation or our lifestyle or our culture, some of us aren't necessarily in the emotional intelligence age. Some aren't there yet. They're having a challenge, maybe measuring or navigating their own emotions, to be able to ask those questions like, can I meet the commitment? That might be a nail biter or a lip biter for some. And I think it's interesting in terms of your poll, because Yvette helped me with the lens of deep connected trust to intense distrust using one of her fabulous tools. And it measures the different levels. So there's a trust sequence, there's a distrust sequence. I like that your poll has the optimism in there, because some in our conversations and in my presentations have shared the feedback that trust is not something they see in their daily life. It's not something that I guess that they see in a consistent basis in others. And the real reminder in some cases, some people are like, I can trust myself. That's why I'm the high achiever. I'm the go-getter. I'm the driver of this. And sometimes I think in solo entrepreneurship, that can come kind of lead into almost what I would call one of the trust myths, which is we forget to do the check-in to really see how we feel about something or to communicate it with others. And that's one of the things I think that I really, our trust journey taught me, was that in situations where I didn't feel safe, or when I was working with teams where someone maybe appeared to be loyal, but they really didn't feel safe, there was something else happening in the background that they weren't really expressing to other team members or to the leaders. There was something else going on, and we needed to dive into that. So I think that's the part that really, for me, is underscoring it's not always consistent. That person who shows up at the same time every day sometimes might have an education or a background that leads to FaceTime as I appear to show up. I'm appearing to share your goals. I'm appearing to really dive deep into company projects. I look like the contributor. And then underneath, sometimes maybe a closer look is needed.
And I agree. None of us are consistently anything, right? We're as human beings. It's just a fact. There's some days that we get up and we're winning, and some days we just get up and we're like, that's just the reality of life. But in order to allow trust to me is not a thing that just sits out there on its own, especially when you're thinking of it in the context of working as a team, working with leadership. I believe that trust fits into the generative adaptive practice gap, right? That is a practice and a set of tenets that I've designed that for continuous growth and improvement, increased engagement, innovation, and also just productive teams. So when I think of trust, it is one of the tenets of the generative adaptive practice, the gap tenets. So can I tell you what the 8 are? Would this be a good time?
It
Or should I
would
hold
be.
on?
But one question I want to ask in
Um,
generative adaptive practice, where's the communication part of it?
so can I the way, if you're a leader or coach, like I am an executive coach and I'm working with teams, there's some level of training that takes place. That's one context, but the tenets itself enables you to have the level of communication and also the evaluation of what's really going on, right? I mean, it's just one of those things that, and so I'm going to try and drop the 8 tenets in the comments, just if that's possible. I don't know. Is it possible that I could do
It
that?
definitely is.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely possible, and I can also capture them and
Okay.
reshare them for you. So
Okay. I'm
so
going to throw it in a private chat. And here you go. Bing, done. The 8.
okay.
Okay. So, I mean, if you look at those 8 different tenets, speaking with an abundance, starting off with an abundance mindset, right? That is one level of communication that you would have with your team or an individual. Right. The second part of that is that we focus on we, which I said we is willing and enabled, right? The person is willing, and we're, as a leader, we're giving them the ability, right, to do certain type of work. And then the part that we're talking about, we trust you to achieve our goals, is the part that we're talking about, trust fidelity. It's one of the tenets, right? We trust you because I have an abundance mindset, and you're willing, the commitment part of where we talk about trust, and also the enablement, that as a leader, that I may have some resource to get you trained. I may have some resource to have some workshops for us to get together. That's part of the communication part that's taking place. The fourth is like we win and lose as a team. One team, one dream. You're starting to see the reframing of the context and the relationship that you're having with those individuals in terms of building trust. It's not, trust doesn't happen, willy-nilly. It takes work, and then so the fifth that I said partner and have conversations to learn more. So if I have external partners that's supporting us, or even internal partners, I want to have conversations to learn what's going on with them. Why aren't we having trust? Why isn't a trust walk stronger? How can we improve our trust walk? That's part of the process. Number 6 is really important. When I say run the experiment and evaluate the hypothesis, because we have tons of hypotheses that we make, and we assume certain things will happen, but let's run the experiment. When we talked about lean agile and doing shorter increments, this is the experiment we're talking about, that I could run something and I could evaluate that hypothesis, that if I build a certain product as an entrepreneur, we're going to make $10 million, right? That's a hypothesis. I could run a smaller increment and says, we made $100,000. How do we get there? The evaluation of the hypothesis. Number 7, what did we learn from failure to grow? Really important. What did we learn from failure to grow? Right? This is that abundance mindset, that it's okay, that failure is a learning opportunity, and we should learn from that. And the final one is fun and joy. Teams that have fun and get joy out of the work, they're far more productive. And I've seen that and team over teams, companies over companies, working with NGOs and nonprofits, and seeing that these 8 elements, these 8 tenets that I speak of, enables trust to grow exponentially. So I just wanted to share that with you and your audience, to say that trust is not something you do in a vacuum. It requires a lot of work, and having something like the generative adaptive practice, those tenets, the gap tenets, really enable that. And the word generative means to give life, right? So I just wanted to make sure that we see this in a broader context, as we talk about trust fidelity and we talk about gap tenets. So I hope
We're
thanks.
definitely seeing it. And thanks, Roz Clark and Leslie George, for popping in and for your incredible support of Impossible Lives. I think it's a lot, Dave. It's a mouthful. And I almost was about to copy the private chat into our LinkedIn chat, but I want to copy them one by one. So
Sure.
for those of you joining us live and popping in later for a replay, check into the comments of the chat, and I'll definitely put Dave's 8, what would you like me to call them? Principles, practices?
It's called the Generative Adaptive Practice, gap tenets.
Okay, so 8 tenets. Okay.
So I'm gonna put the wording exactly in our private chat, so that there you go.
I appreciate that, and thanks as always, as Dave is going deep. One of the things too, Dave, for leaders who aren't looking at flexible environments, in a sense of maybe it's a manufacturing company, maybe they've got systems and processes that are already predetermined, possibly by other leaders, possibly without a lot of feed forward, as I would say, from the employees who are actually using them every day. Where would you suggest that they start? Where's the beginning? I know we have 8 tenets. Do we start with number 1 and we
Yes.
finish with number 8, or do we
I would
bounce
say
around?
start with number 1, because number 1 would enable us to lean into some of the lean practices that already exist in manufacturing, right? I mean, that's where it started with the Toyota production system, right? I mean, so an abundance mindset is part of the lean habits. So that's where I would start.
That sounds good. And the second one was focus on willing and enabled. The willing is really clear. And can you talk to us a little bit about the enabled part?
Well, sure. As a leader, whether you're an assigned leader, VP, or I am an emergent leader, right? I'm pursuing moving forward. Enablement could come either from me going out and learning stuff like you and I do, or enablement could come from someone funding our training. So from a leadership perspective, it's like I'm emerging, so I am going to go and enable myself. I wanted to get a doctorate, so I went and enabled myself. I pursued that, right? I wanted to write books, so I enabled myself to learn how to do that. I wanted to get in Forbes. I enabled myself to be able to write some articles that fits there. But someone else could have funded, and people have funded certain knowledge and the capabilities that I have, and they enabled me. So that's what we're looking at. I'm willing, and there's an enablement that's going to allow me to get greater capabilities, upskilling, right? Those different things that we talk about in our modern organization today.
So while we're on the knowledge part, and really, we're definitely in the Always Be Learning Club. So I want to thank you for having a chapter meeting with me today. And Dave, the Knowledge Share. Tell me how you named your company.
Knowledge Share is what Knowledge Share stands for, right? And so I'm a learning facilitator. I'm always sharing knowledge, whether it's people as my clients. I spin up my meetup or my conferences that I partner with others to do. It's the 5 Saturdays STEM program. So it's always knowledge sharing. I'm always trying to help people to grow, but it's not just one way. it comes back to, I learned so much from individuals. I learned a lot from you. We've met, in the short amount of time that we've met, I've consumed lots of different types of knowledge from you, people that you've introduced me to. To me, that's all part of knowledge sharing, right? I mean, allowing me to have this audience today is part of knowledge sharing. So that's where knowledge share comes from.
So basically, opening up our doors, our hearts, our minds, our
Spirit.
resources, and really also the process of kind of showing up. I think one of the interesting parts when I started really exploring trust, I started exploring it because of Yvette Bethel mentioning trust styles at an emotional intelligence conference. And I have a beta course, and style is the first module. And I appreciate it because somebody who attended one of my master classes on style, she said, you mentioned style can be the hard part to start when you're creating connections to scale. And I said, yeah, there's so many styles. People aren't necessarily sure, hmm, unless we're feeling totally supported or we are always showing up as present and genuine. We don't always share all of those styles. And it depends on the environment and also whether you're the leader, the facilitator, you're the attendee, you're a stakeholder, you're just a guest, you're a volunteer. It depends on your role, really, what style maybe you'd bring to the table. And I think because of that, I really enjoy the adaptive part of your gap, the reminder that the flexibility is necessary because we're not necessarily sure in certain settings as people's roles change, as culture changes, as our fragile world shows cues of whether it's safe to show up, whether this is not the best time, whether it's something to address privately or publicly. I really think that's why the adaptive part is really important. I do like one of your tenets. I think you'll say it's probably the sixth one about run the experiment and evaluate the hypothesis. I
Yeah.
don't think there's enough time sometimes in certain environments, possibly number of hours in the day, or whether we have feasibility committees or think tanks or focus groups to kind of flesh out the debrief part. I think sometimes that's the part that in teams, and I notice that in events too, a lot of times people don't debrief afterwards.
Yeah.
They attend the event, they collect the information, they shake the hands, they set up the display, they unpack, they totally relax and chill out afterwards, and then the overwhelm sits in. And somehow in that process, the debrief part doesn't happen as early as it could be.
So let me, is it okay for me to just share, my experiences with this context? Because it's a total, what we call a mindset shift that happens within the organization to behave this way. This is a practice. This becomes a habit. And so, I, like I said, I work with Fortune 50 companies down to startups. And once they start to get into this type of practice of working in this way, it becomes a thing that they do every day, right? There are just different things that they do every day. Like, hey, yeah, I ran an experiment yesterday, and as part of the practice that I knew that I had to evaluate. So here, let me share this back with the group, and can I have some feedback? Right? That is what we're talking about, the shift that's taking part in the organization. It's not a bunch of stuff that sits on the wall. This is a practice every day that you come to work. And even when you go home, it's like people go, God, you're like this lean, agile, practicey kind of guy. Yes, I am this lean, agile, practicey kind of guy, because it makes my life easy and simple to be able to, you know what? I don't know if I could accomplish that, but can I run a smaller slice of that? And then let me figure out, if I'm running that slice, how will I know that I'm successful? That's also part of the question, right? So each one of these tenets have a series of things that you do to make sure that you're achieving, the intent of that tenet itself. So I just wanted to share that with you, what I've seen with fairly large companies and fairly small companies, that people who are doing this practice, they're being rather successful in the work, and they're learning.
That's fantastic. So I had asked before where the communication part, basically you have it built in through the entire gap process.
That's right.
And it's at every stage and it's in
In
between,
every
kind of like
stage.
that
Yeah.
peanut butter and jelly. I remember in the beginning when I was first starting with outlining the course, I kept saying communication was a step that was in between, almost as if it was a 7 or 8 or 9 layer cake. Fortunately, now I have that cake down to 5 critical elements. So, but the I love what you're saying about the communication part because I think that's where people get stuck. People are at different levels of we enter organizations, we're onboarded, and what that process is like for your newcomers or for people maybe whose roles are changing. Maybe you have a part timer who's now going full time. Maybe you have somebody who was on family medical leave and they're now reemerging. That the focus part really can continue to change in it. And I think that's the part in the beginning where I felt the gap was that maybe there's no set manual or guidelines of what the current experiments are. And in a sense, you would say of what questions are we looking to answer for? And what questions would we like answered today, next month? I think that's the interesting part of your approach of the lean agile because what we're measuring this first quarter may change in the middle. How
Yeah.
we measure it, who's measuring it, why they're measuring it. And I love it from a conversation I'm about to have with an amazing referral. They're really exciting because they're modifying a current project for a different marketplace. So the process of watching the experimentation, the exploration, really enjoying that, especially from the creative perspective. One of the things I
And
want to say too, Dave, go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead. You go ahead.
No, you
You
go
said
go right ahead. Go right ahead.
well. I just wanted to also say that as you're talking about courses, these tenets are realized through a course. It's not like I said. It's not a monument that you stick up on a wall somewhere and you go, let's read this every day. In order for you to get into the abundance mindset, one of the things that I bring forward is this thing called Ubuntu. Ubuntu is that African term that says "I am because we are," and we talk about it in principles and values. So when I think of the Ubuntu principles of having an abundance mindset, I said, "I see you, I value you, and I welcome you." Right? I could practice that. Right? Can I practice that? Can you practice that? Seeing someone, valuing them, and welcoming them into your space, that's part of the abundance mindset. And those are the three principles. Then you go over to the values, right? And so one of the four values when we talk about Ubuntu is that we want partnership. We want resilience together. I want it to be able to have patience and kindness with you. And that translates into the word called love. Love is patient, love is kind, right? Patience and kindness. So I'm just giving you a context of it's we have to practice these things on a daily basis to be able to effectively lead our teams and lead ourselves through the journey of really understanding it. So behind these 8 tenets, there's a series of exercises and things that you do to enable you to realize the fact that I could have an abundance mindset, because you just don't sit down and just have it.
I really am appreciating that from the perspective of it's one of my favorite uh, Bible verses. Oh, and I love Leslie. Thank you always. Leslie has, I love that. My company's pillars are on the rise: recognize, inspire, support, and educate. Leslie, I adore you and your Mosaic Nation of co-elevators. You gotta come. We gotta find a good Leslie day that works for her schedule for her to come and join us. And maybe we'll pick another day for Leslie for an Impossible Live for this busy, amazing author and diversity, equity, inclusion trailblazer. I'm gonna call her. But wow, I love that, Leslie. Actually, I'm putting the company pillars up because boy, you're bringing me joy by seeing them. I think one of the interesting parts, and Dave calls them values is, and I appreciate that. I'm reminded in the trust work with Yvette and conversations with others, those pillars, we don't always share those. We don't always communicate those. In some cases, some may encounter a fear of expression in crowded markets. I reminded of an amazing member of Leslie's community of Charlene Brown, who reminds us really guard and keep an eye on our intellectual property in this process, because Dave has also shown us with 9 books, and I'm gonna have to tease him because Dave, I wonder how long it'll take you to reach the number 10. But I think
I already know what it is, and so I'll just tell you that I am, writing a book about my great grandmother, and so her birthday is November 5th. No, her birthday is November 1st. I was confusing her with one of my sisters. Her birthday is November 1st. So the intent is to have that memoir finished and published by November 1st of 2024. Right.
that's amazing. Do you self-publish?
Yes. I really enjoy the process of it. To me, it reminds me of cooking. Right. I mean, it's like getting in there and putting all the ingredients, and maybe let me add a sprinkle of this or that. That's totally not cookie cutter. So I love self-publishing. I'm a creative person, I'm a musician. So I love bringing that aspect to the things that I'm creating. And I don't always want someone to always tell me that I can't do that. So I love self-publishing.
That sounds amazing. And Leslie's cheering you on already. I love it too because it reminds me, I enjoy the part of the alchemy of it, the mixing it up, the helping others create and elevate their blend so that others can see them and they're not the best kept secret. Whether it's an organization, an entrepreneur, and in many cases, we remember things in bullet points by acronyms, but also by the problems others help us solve. I I'm really excited too because Leslie's gonna help me get my bestseller out in the world. I realized I needed a book doula, not just a coach, and somebody with an amazing mindset to kind of guide me through the journey in a way that really fits that acronym of what Leslie said. We need inspiration. And hopefully, this is inspiring others to take some steps to explore trust on their own terms, at their own pace, and within their own organizations or within smaller subcultures so that you can really explore and we can make our fragile world a little bit safer to live in. Dave, where can people find you? So are your books all on Amazon?
They're all on Amazon.
Okay.
And you could get it as a print. You could get it as, if you love my voice, you could get it in Audible. And it's also Kindle available. So I make sure that, my books, I do my own audio recording. So I make sure that's all available, based on all of me, the whole person of Dr. Dave. And that's what most people call me. So you could find my books on Amazon. Also, you could find a knolshare.org. That's KNOL share.org. That's where I have a lot of my courses. I have like on-demand courses that you could take as well. Or you could go to davecornelius.us. So I have tons of websites, but those are my 2 core sites. We could go to knolshare or davecornelius.us, and you could, learn about, just the journey that I've been on, throughout life.
Well, I appreciate you putting in today and sharing with us a little piece of your trust journey, your gap journey, your integrity journey, your leadership journey, and a little bit more about Dave. And really, I'd love to encourage our listeners to kind of lean into explore. And I love also that you're writing a memoir about a family member. You're reminding me of our recent conversation with Linda about how legacies illuminate puzzles.
Yes.
And it's a wonderful way to honor our loved ones. And you reminded me as we're about to honor our matriarchs. Very grateful for that
Yes.
opportunity over the next 2 weeks. Just thanks, Dave, for popping in and dropping some Dave gems with us, and
I have
a
one more
great
thing.
chance to get to learn a little bit more about you
Yeah,
in between group coaching sessions.
that's right.
What
One
more things do you
one
want
last
to?
thing is that I'm totally stoked about is the Tucson Festival of Books. I've been trying for years to get recognized as an indie author, and so finally, after 3+ years of trying, I get to be on a podium as an indie author and recognized as an indie author. So um, just another thing that I work at, and over time, it's about being resilient, right, and persistent to get into your goals. So just
Well,
another.
congratulations and welcome, Cheryl. When does the festival kick off?
It's March 9th and 10th. And so it's a Saturday, Sunday, and I'll be doing some like live streaming like this and having conversation about the books and people who are in Tucson, Arizona. So Tucson Festival of Books is really
Will
yeah,
it be part of your podcast, or will you go live on LinkedIn or YouTube or
all of the above.
all of the above? Okay,
Yeah.
we will find you in multiple locations. We'll get Dave to drop lots of those gems and links. When I asked Dave for a podcast to listen to, Dave said there were over 270.
Yeah.
We now know he's got 9 books. 10th is on the way. And as Leslie's saying, congratulations. And thanks again, Dave, for popping in today to share some gems with us. And thanks for popping in to listen. So whether you're listening live or for replays, please let us know your gems, what's coming up for you around our conversations. And I hope you have a magnificent day filled with opportunities and possibilities. Stay safe, stay well, stay inspired, stay in touch, and take great care. Be well, and thanks again for joining us today.
Let's talk about talk. Let's go deep. We all have something to share. No share with Dr. Dave.